Dr. J.W.A., youth theologist since 1994. The life of Muhammad and the verified revelation structure of the people of the book, episode 39. The exhaustion the Muslims do not name. And the tiredness no longer leaves. The Muslim listener still wakes early, still performs, still attends, still repeats the expected language and rituals. But internally something has started wearing down. Not physically first, morally, psychologically, spiritually. Viewers, in the previous episode, the hidden war inside the Muslim intensified beneath visible obedience inside Muhammad's Islamic ideological system. And in this episode, the conflict produces another consequence. The exhaustion the Muslim doesn't name. Because unresolved inward contradiction, religious contradiction, might I say, eventually drains the Muslim carrying it. And the Muslim inside the Islamic authority structure, increasingly feels the strain. The mind strays, alert publicly. The soul grows tired privately. The temptation must constantly be suppressed, and fantasy must constantly be hidden. An inward resentment must constantly be controlled, and eventually the deeper realization quietly surfaces. And that is that the Muslims no longer merely maintaining righteousness. They're maintaining an exhausting performance against corruption still living underneath the Islamic ideological performance itself. And that mechanism becomes extraordinarily heavy because appearance-based righteousness requires continual emotional management. The smile must remain convincing. The language must remain disciplined. The image must remain intact. The confidence must remain convincing. But underneath the appearance, the Muslim listener increasingly feels divided against himself and herself. The people of the book repeatedly warn that external managed righteousness cannot stop inward corruption from playing out. And Muhammad missed this critical point. Where righteousness becomes performance, sin is not conquered, it conquers. It is aroused, strengthened, concealed, and eventually defended beneath religious identity itself. You see, sin then seizes opportunity through moral uncleanness, inward corruption surviving beneath outward discipline, factions, hidden relational fracture spreading beneath collective appearance, an ideological intimidation, fear-based pressure preserving the Islamic authority structure against exposure. And that is the warning carried among the people of the book. Externally managed righteousness may regulate religious behaviour publicly, for the most part, at least. But privately, sin continues spreading wherever temptation remains active, wherever obedience to make Allah happy or stop him from being sad continues. And externally managed righteousness may regulate behaviour publicly, but privately sin continues spreading wherever temptation remains active. Appetite remains hidden and fear governs honesty. And exhaustion weakens resistance, and the inward corruption survives beneath the Islamic religious identity. And many Muslims will admit this. Muhammad's Islamic ideological system found its origin of influence by associating itself with apparently a collusion with the people of the book, even though the people of the book rejected Muhammad's claims. And the sacred meanings carried among the people of the book were concerned with stopping the inward corruption of sin itself. And that distinction becomes increasingly painful for the Muslim listener now, because the exhaustion itself begins exposing the deeper problem. And that is, if righteousness were truly overcoming corruption internally, why does the inward battle keep growing heavier instead of lighter? The people of the book expose the danger directly when they said in Romans 7:5, "For when we were in the realm of the commands, the sinful passions aroused by the commands were at work in us." The Qur'anic submission structure repeatedly reinforces visible obedience, contrary to the advice of the people of the book. Quran 24:51, hear and obey. And that reinforcement matters enormously, because once visible obedience becomes the primary evidence of righteousness, the exhausted inward life underneath the obedience can remain hidden almost indefinitely. Someone laughs publicly while secretly collapsing internally. Another keeps repeating certainty while privately drowning in temptation and shame. A young Muslim stares into the dark after prayer, wondering why the war inside never stops truly. And eventually, another realization quietly begins surfacing underneath the exhaustion itself. And that is, what if the Islamic ideological structure is controlling behaviour but not stopping the corruption, the internal corruption? The prayer continues, the performance survives, but inwardly the exhaustion keeps spreading, not only through the Muslim, but through the whole Islamic ideological system. I'm Dr. J.W. Ayub, theologist since 1994. Like, subscribe, press the bell, comment to educate me, and share the video to help somebody else. Bye for now.